Hi there, Glocal Citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Sadu, coming to you from a sunny, beautiful Brooklyn afternoon. We have a winter sun, and the sun rays have been bathing me all afternoon. I'm so happy for this day before the storms come, which are expected tonight. But enough about winter. We have a bright and sunny character that is with us today. He is a multi-talented keynote speaker, astounding audiences with his unique blend of poetry, hip-hop music, and relevant social messages. He has spoken at many prestigious universities, including Harvard University, Brown University, and UMass Amherst. And he has shared the stage with recording artists Common, KRS-One, and Ludacris. From large audiences to citywide Earth Day festivals to more intimate settings, including classrooms and school assemblies, his words inspire people, particularly youth, with powerful messages focused on personal transformation, critical thinking, global responsibility, and how young people can use their voices to be leaders in their communities. Tem Blessed, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, indeed. Peace, love, and justice. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And so the question I first asked, we want to know where are you from, where are you local, and what is your craft?
Yes. All right. So I was born Temistocles Guzmão Duarte Ferreira. So that's the whole government. Yeah. Blessed with a Greek name by my father who was into history. So Temistocles was a general, admiral of the Greeks that actually got the title, or his claim to fame is that he helped continue democracy when it was being threatened. And so back when those who voted for war actually went to war, right? At a different time, and maybe wars wouldn't be quickly. People wouldn't quickly go to war if that was the case. But I always like to say, I'm a general for peace, waging love in the streets is really where I'm at right now. And so I grew up in New Bedford, although I was born in Guinea-Bissau, West Africa, to Cape Verdean parents. So I consider myself Cape Verdean. So I'm African American, and only recently, post-Obama, have I been able to really take that on and realize that that's what I am. And that's who I am in this life. But I did most of my work in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where a lot of Cape Verdeans go and settle, and mainly due to historically the whaling industry, but more recently the fishing industry, because we are an island nation. And so a lot of folks were able to get work in those industries, and then textile industries, which seems to be a lot of the work that folks in the past 30 years were getting some of the work as far as Cape Verdeans and other working class folks. Right now, though, I'm in Western Massachusetts in Amherst, where, I went to school at UMass Amherst, got my degree there. And although I went back after graduating to New Bedford, eventually came back to this area because it's just so beautiful as far as the environment. It has a great school system. And so I felt like it would be great for my children to get an education and be around nature more than the concrete jungle of New Bedford.
I heard that. That's for true.
Yeah. So hip hop has been much of my life, and comics also. So I'm glad that now I'm able to kind of blend the two and finally come full circle with that.
Okay. So you told us where you're from. You told us where you're local. And so tell us your craft. What is the magic?
Oh, yeah. So the magic is spoken word, poetry, hip hop rhyming, if you will. I am an MC, and at age 3, I came to the city and be family from country CV to be free, not fallacy. Opportunity to make money, but mainly in criminality. My God men in my brain understand the game. It's a shame, funny at times, but serious. I choose to rhyme. You feel this? I shine to blind, vindictive, jealousy. Most brothers envy my clarity, a thought, the way I talk to rock all shows, block, oppose, supreme negativity. Now I balance both, fortify my reality, conquer challenges to roll, jet out on surreal, mystic, linguistic appeal to masses under underground level, kid chaos, a rebel, edible, delicious, finger licking, nutritious, make muscle mass men, crispy chicken. I'm original formula. I'm sticking to uplifting my people, informing my crew. Never was no sequel. First man, God is woman. Give birth, Mother Earth, Africa, placenta, bless, not curse, love maker, inventor, creator. I was sent to take you to new places, new faces, constellations. See, I makes the most out of little. Yeah. So yeah,
Yes.
most out of little.
Ooh, that was dope. That was
Thank you.
dope. You
Thank
are
you.
definitely a spoken word and hip hop artist because that just
Yeah.
rolled right out of you. I love it. I love it.
Word, word. And I
Nice.
need it, I think sometimes it's easier to share
Yes.
that piece
Yes.
than just to say it. And so, the power of words, as we know, is so profound. I mean, sound and music and vibrations is really what life is made of. That's what scientists have been telling us, right? And
Yeah.
we feel it, and we can feel it when we hear the marching band or when our parents are calling us to the dinner table.
Mhm.
You feel the vibes and you move. And so I've been moved by a lot of great artists throughout the past, whether it's Bob Marley or Rakim, Eric B and Rakim, or Q-Tip, and all genres, whether it's Cesaria Evora from Cape Verde. And so we've
Mhm.
all been moved by these great people and orators like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. And so I've always wanted to continue that legacy as best I could, and not to try to compare myself to those great, amazing folks. But that's the spirit that we craft of some of the work that I've been doing for the past over 20 years now, just continuing to push out in the spirit of uplifting our people and bringing consciousness and life to this
Mhm.
planet.
Mhm. 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 So
Yeah.
let's talk about how you came to be an American.
Yeah.
Your family is Cape Verdean, but you actually didn't live in Cape Verde as a child. You grew up in Guinea-Bissau,
Yeah.
is that correct?
Well, so I was born in Guinea-Bissau,
Yeah.
and because of the fight for independence at that time, so
Mm.
I, like
Mhm.
a number of other folks my age, we're the children of the revolution, or children of the independence. And
Mm.
so
Mhm.
we got our independence from Portuguese. Portuguese was the colonizers, in 1975. I was born in 74. And so my family immigrated. They moved from there because it was really turbulent. But my father really wanted us to have the opportunity, especially in education. And I
Mhm.
love telling the story because he never let us forget it. He was like, the reason
Mm.
why we're here is for you all to get an education. So at 3 years of age, I moved with my whole family, which was a blessing, all 8 of us, to New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow,
Yeah.
8 of you. So where are you in the birth order?
So I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the
I'm the
baby.
baby. I'm the baby. Yeah, I'm the baby of the family, youngest of 6. And that's where the name Blessed came from. The stage name is just realizing not only was I blessed to be able to draw and to have this gift of gab and
Yeah,
poetry, but
yeah.
also family, right? I realized when I looked around that, I was really blessed to have, first of all, a mother and father in the home, right? A loving, caring, disciplined, organized home, and also these older siblings that really looked out for each other and really had each other's back. So that's where the blessed came
Mhm.
from, more of a spiritual side of things. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I usually ask the question, "Why the where?" But I think you've kind of covered it, in terms of how your family moved across for education. But but I wanna understand a little bit more, and you mentioned why you are where you are because you're at the nature in
Yeah.
Amherst versus being somewhere else. But
Hmm.
let's get a little bit deeper into exactly why the where, like,
Yeah.
so for example, on your block or what, something specific, more specific about like, why did you choose where you are now to be living, working, and playing?
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting because for so much of my life, I had been in New Bedford, and I feel very much connected to New Bedford, even after graduating from UMass. Going back to New Bedford. So I'd love to talk about New Bedford, if that
Oh,
makes
yes. Yes,
yeah,
yes, 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 yes. Mhm.
yeah, and so as I shared a little bit about why Cape Verdeans ended up in New Bedford, but I had the choice to go back to New Bedford after graduating because I really felt a connection to give back. Being the youngest of six, I was that kid that was trying to get his mom to have another kid, and mom was like, "Listen, I'm 40
No.
years old at this point. Like, I'm 46 at that time." She's like, "It ain't happening, kid." I'm like, "Oh, that's not biologically possible now." So I felt that I had been given so much, and so when I was at UMass, I did this mentoring program where I was like a tutor counselor and really caught the bug of helping young people, mentoring young people. And so when I graduated, I came back to New Bedford. Upward Bound program was the program that I started working at, became a residential director. And then there was this other national program called Youth Build that took young people, 16 to 24-year-old young adults, and really gave them an opportunity to learn carpentry skills. Some of them were getting their GEDs. And also we had a leadership program that gave folks opportunities to get like an AmeriCorps grant and go off to college. And so I was doing that by day. And, I saw myself like a Clark Kent kind of, a black Clark Kent by day, being the youth worker, and at night, continuing to pursue my hip hop career as Tem Blessed, a hip hop artist and MC. And knowing that, both of those lives are very much interchangeable in the sense that hip hop was and continues to be the language of the youth, especially in the city, urban youth, and youth that are disenfranchised and most times marginalized. And so, using that, the ability of poetry to really uniquely reach the young people through music and art, and also fulfilling what I feel like is my mission and my purpose in life, to continue to elevate, consciousness through music, the same way that a lot of these great musicians and poets and activists, and so in that spirit really felt the responsibility in New Bedford, who had a lot of historical roots, first with Frederick Douglass. That was the place that he went right when he escaped slavery. He went to New Bedford first and started, his abolitionist work there. And then knowing, some of the history through the 54th Regiment. I went to school at my elementary school was called Sergeant William H. Carney Academy. And so we got some of that history from folks right off rip, including my sixth grade, having Jabril Kazan, whose his former name is Izell Blair, and he's one of the Greensboro Four, so one of the four young men who sat at a World War counter and started these sit-ins and part of the whole civil rights movement, adding to the civil rights movement. And so we knew about this kind of growing up and being politicized by my father, who was also a political prisoner during that whole independence in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And he always talked to us about Amilcar Cabral, who is our George Washington, if you will, our Malcolm X, if you will, helped us gain our independence. And a lot of people, in Guinea-Bissau and then in Angola, and even the Portuguese people, because Guinea and Cape Verde, that was Salazar, who was the dictator of Portugal. That was their Vietnam, if you will, and that allowed some of the youth to rise up in Portugal and say like, hey, we got to get rid of this guy. So yeah, so New Bedford is really dear to my heart because unfortunately it's still economically depressed, even though we like to call, and the youth like to call it, secret city, because there's a lot of talent, a lot of amazing beauty that is almost like a diamond in the rough. And so I always continue, even after moving to to Amherst, get called all the time to go back to New Bedford and want to continue to be called. And even in the book now that I wrote, the first chapter start off, and the youth that are the heroes and the sheroes of the book are from New Bedford, Massachusetts. So I love New Bedford and always will feel that connection to its great history, at one time being the richest city in America because of the whaling industry and the fact that that's where people were getting oil right before they struck oil on the ground. That was the city that lit the world because they were melting the blubber of the whales and that's how we were lighting lanterns back in the 1800s. And so from then to now is where we're at. Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
dope. Like I never knew that New Bedford had all that history. I mean, I think obviously because you lived there, you lived the history, so you knew a lot
Mhm.
more about it. And so,
Yeah.
folks, the show notes are going to be really historical. You will have so much to like know and understand about Black history in the Northeast,
Mhm.
particularly as that being a seat of activism. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Nice.
totally.
And also the links, we had in the US had the Great Migration is where how many so many people moved from the South to the North. And I call the decolonization migration is kind of how a
Mhm.
lot of our African diaspora came to the US or moved. And so, there was that other kind of political strife. So you mentioned Salazar and Portugal having even their own internal like
Yeah.
uprising revolution. So yeah, I think we in the US absolutely do not learn very much in a global history.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah.
very and
It's
particularly not African history. So I love when I speak to people like yourself who are bringing that and also bringing it in a new art form, not a new art form, but
yes.
bringing it in different art forms that are attracting young people. And we'll talk more about your new book, which I
Okay.
can't wait. But sticking a pin on the economics side of it, because
Yeah.
we want to understand more about you as an artist first and
Yeah.
foremost. So you graduated school, you
Yeah.
were looking at what you wanted to do, and so what were the economic drivers for you in thinking about like how am I going to survive? Like how did the business person in you emerge?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great question because it's challenging, right? So once I left UMass Amherst with a group called Busted Fro, that was the name of the group at the time, and we all rocked. The fros were busted before the locks. Out here, and it's cool to see that a lot of the youth, even my children now, they're rocking a Busted Fro. I'm like, you guys are rocking a Busted Fro. Behind me over there's a poster. But we looked to get signed. So it was,
Mm,
two MCs and a DJ, and we called that, the original formula, similar to Run DMC, where you had Run and DMC and then Jam Master Jay. We had that original formula. Here's these two MCs, two guys and a DJ, and all we need is the mic and the turntables, and we're gonna do it. And we were shooting for that top tier. We had gone through at that time, we didn't realize we were living through this golden age of hip hop, 92 through 96. And so this spectrum of artists from the Fugees to Wu-Tang to NWA to Tupac and Biggie and Common and Black Star and the Roots, that was all at play. Like KRS-One was the top selling artist, right?
mm,
And Outkast was like before they crossed over and became mainstream. These were all artists that we were looking at as our peers and like, hey, we're gonna be that next in that spirit. But then something drastically happened where, and I believe it was just a hijacking of hip hop as a genre where it went very street heavy. And so hip hop has always been from the streets, from the community, from the park. Hip hop started out in the park. However, it really shifted where, it was really about street cred. It was really about the drug game. It was really about, so think right after Tupac got killed. And I remember going on air. This was, I want to say like, what was that? Like 95, 96. Tupac gets killed and there's a void. So who's going to fill that void? And here comes G Unit, right? Here comes 50, here comes Ja
mm,
Rule, here comes a lot of like the Tupac lookalikes, but not Tupac talking about Black Panther and Black Steel and the Hour Chaos, or actually that's a Public Enemy reference, but Tupac, Dear Mama, Tupac talking about Brenda's got a baby, right? Now it's Thug Life Tupac, it's Tupac after Juice, right?
mhm,
Becoming Bishop
mhm,
Tupac, right?
mhm, mhm. It
Um,
was mhm.
yeah,
It was
very
like the bling. I call it the blinging of the
bling.
music, and
Yeah,
that's basically as soon as that bling became the pervasive goal or the
totally.
the puff up, then yeah,
Yeah.
totally
Oh,
changed.
yeah. Yeah. And Biggie dying and Puffy becoming the
Yep.
main artist on his label, right? This
Mhm.
you could see definitely a shift. And so I say all that just to say that we were like, hey, let's look to see if we're gonna get signed. And although we had some offers, it never made sense, right?
Yeah.
It always felt like we were just going to be slaves on the plantation, if you exclude the analogy, but the reality of like, hey, we want to be independent and we're going to just make this be independent. And so when we launched our first album, which was self-titled Busted Fro, it was in that spirit of just being independent, just saying what we wanted to say. We weren't going to glorify the violence that we were seeing in our neighborhoods because that really wasn't what we liked to see or wanted to see. We were never inclined to sell drugs. That wasn't for me. My upbringing was like, that's poison. Why would you sell that to your neighborhood, even if you thought that that was your only choice? And we knew, because we had a degree and because we could be youth workers and activists, and knowing that there was a spirit of entrepreneurship in the hip hop culture, that hey, we could move these units out our trunk, and we did. And and that's in the emergence also of the internet at that time. Once again, thinking about in 96 through 2001, that's when we finally launched our first album. Knew that like, hey, we got something here that people want to hear, that people are hungry to hear, even in the midst of everything else. Let's do it ourselves. Let's put it out there, not only in the internet, but also hand to hand with the flyers. And luckily, it struck a chord. People were excited about it, and they also could hear the meat. And for me, till this day, it's like, I love the beats. Yes, I love the rap, the flow of it. However, like, give me something, give me something to give me some substance to the rhymes, and just don't make it sound slick. Actually, give me some consciousness behind it. And why?
Sure.
What's the struggle behind this? What's the celebration around your rhymes that is so much a part of who we are as African people? So we continue to put out albums from 2021 and on, and even having a solo career myself as Tembless, with Brilliance being my first offering, and also internationally. So Estrella Negra was the name of a group with JJ, who's another MC who raps just in Creole. I rapped in English, even though I do speak Creole. To falar Creole, para tu que gente lá, to everybody that I were able to hold on to the native tongue and the mother tongue of Cape Verdean Creole, which is a mixture, for those that don't know, of Portuguese and West African dialect mixed in. And then the DJ Wal G was actually for both groups, Busted Fro and Estrella Negra. And so we got a chance to go back to Cape Verde many times through festivals and through shows, and to always be a force of consciousness. I don't shy away from being a conscious rapper. I know some people, they do, and I never understood that, or why. Maybe it's because of the age that I grew up in. Because for me, that's what hip hop is. I understand the spectrum of it, but when I came up, like even the Wu-Tang, even the of course the Wu-Tang, but even the I was gonna, not G, but Coogee Rap, right? There was always like where it came from, right? It was never just like, just selling drugs just for the sake of drugs. Even Biggie, right? His very first hit, Juicy, is very positive. Unfortunately, it was probably one of the most, probably one of his biggest records, the most positive one. And then, it just kind of went downhill. In my opinion, he's an amazing lyricist. Nothing to take anything from Biggie.
Sure.
Of course, from Brooklyn, spread love is the Brooklyn way. I always think about that. And but unfortunately, his demise was because of this lifestyle that was glorified in American culture, right? Not just hip hop, but in American culture of guns and violence. And unfortunately, not enough spotlight on the totality of any person.
Right. Which is so interesting when you say the hijacking, because the customer, as much as we want to think that it is us and has always been us, the customer that sold millions and millions and millions, Black people are 13% of the population in the US. So when you're talking about multi-million, multi-platinum albums, et cetera, it's not only us that's buying it. And so, and that's our population, and that is not the adult population. So it just gets smaller and smaller. So the people who are buying it and hijacking it, and who it's being marketed to, we have to be very conscious of who that is and why those labels are
Mhm.
particularly looking for certain kinds of inputs to sell to those people, right?
Oh yeah.
So it's a mindset they want to sell to them. It's a fantasy, and it's a role that they think they play as well, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, lots to think
Yeah.
about
Yeah. Oh, totally. And just to throw a little piece in the mix, and there's, an article that has circulated, and I saw it, come up again. And it was actually some students that brought it to my attention, and it just validated what I always felt, because living through it, I noticed that shift. And, the story goes that, all these record executives get invited to this meeting, and they're like,
yeah,
hey, if you can move some of your artists to talk up and glorify the
yeah,
drug dealing and the putting down of the women and just the violence, we'll give you shares in the prison industrial complex, and
yeah,
private prison system.
yeah.
And for me, I believe it, even though the person who published this article came out anonymous. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to find that link. And it's not such a tough theory, because as we saw how many people of color, black and brown folks, started to be incarcerated and put behind bars in the 90s, in
Hmm.
90s into 2000s. It's easy to see that it's not just due to hip hop, right? But also, some of the policies that were passed during that time. So there's been a hijacking of the people, and we know that once you're incarcerated, you lose your rights to vote, and also,
Hmm.
you can also be used as free labor, by, there's so many people that are making, products for companies right now,
Yes,
and get
yes,
paid
yes,
nothing,
yep.
or just a fraction of what that, the labor should be. So
Hmm.
it's big business, and unfortunately, the powers that be are still controlling some of that power, but we always fight for that, through knowledge and wisdom and music and art. That's how we get to put out, some of our messages, and especially in being independent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm that you brought up the prison industrial complex. It is a major industry,
Mm.
has been a major industry from the time that jails were first, conceived, right?
See, yeah.
So, throughout the 1800s, like the we all, I mean, many people know this, is that the chain gang built so much
Mhm.
infrastructure. They built
Mhm.
railroads. They worked in mines. So it has always, we America has a real interesting
Yeah. Oh
interesting,
man.
and I think it's not America, I just think it's the capitalist complex, right? Because it
Yes.
happened in every place where, colonizers came, and where capitalism has taken hold is the exploitation of labor, usually for free, and usually it was of indigenous peoples or
Yeah.
those who were brought to be for specific purposes as they were here. Yeah, it's deep.
Yeah,
It goes
it's
deep.
really deep, and it's
Yeah.
important for people. I think to always make those connections and not shy away from that, because it's a human challenge, right? It's a
Mhm.
consciousness problem, right? And I always,
Mhm.
like to say, black, brown, red devil, white devil, still devil. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's a devilish mindset. It's a greedy mindset, and we know we
Mhm.
can find it in any shade, even though it seems like, the lighter shades seem to be at the top right now, but that could easily flip, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we see it, in Africa. We see, who's exploiting and killing off some of the brothers and sisters in Africa look just like, us, and look like the people that they're killing and exploiting. And so it
Mhm.
goes beyond a shade, but we know that, racism is a tool, that's has been used and used effectively, unfortunately, against people, especially our people of
Yeah.
color, and black and brown folks. And so, hopefully one day, the truth gets told, and it's unfortunate that a lot of times, it's to the detriment of those who are speaking the truth, right? That seem to lose out on whatever, even their freedom or their lives. And I always think about, the greats like MLK. We just
Mhm. We just
celebrated
celebrated. Yeah.
today, and
Yeah.
and Malcolm X, and and Amilcar Cabral. Most of these folks knew that they, or Che Guevara, right, to take it international. Like, these folks could have easily just they got their degrees or got their knowledge and were like, okay, I could just make my money and be good, like a lot of people choose to do nowadays. But they said, no, I'm gonna try, make my mark and try to free our people. And they paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm thankful that we honor them. And maybe one day we'll have a Malcolm X Day. That would be awesome.
Right. Right.
Haj
Right.
Malik El Shabazz Day.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's the spirit that the music comes from, and it's for everyone. I think anyone who listened to this, for our light skinned brothers, our Caucasian brothers and sisters, know that we love y'all. I mean, and even
Mhm.
me. I mean, if people can't see me, but I'm of the lighter shade. I'm a black man of the lighter shade because we have that in us, right? And we all came from Africa. Y'all just realize that. Even you
Right.
seem to
Right.
hate even the KKK, neo-Nazi. Guess what? Your lineage is in Africa, all right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
dig deep enough and don't shy away from the truth and the answer, and then maybe
Right.
then we can be one one day.
Right, maybe. So I want to move on to talk about, as you're saying, these people who we uphold as trailblazers and torchbearers with their works and their words, and particularly focusing on youth, which is where you land. So
Yeah.
you went back to New Bedford to be a part of that movement, to really uplift youth in particular. But you've done quite a bit. You've gone above and beyond. So tell us more about. So you did the music. You were very entrepreneurial in getting your music
Yeah.
out there. And
Yeah.
so then how did you emerge as like a real like national figure in youth empowerment and the speeches and all those things? How did that emerge?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just, really being able to speak truth to power. You got to have a
Mhm.
certain level of confidence
Mhm.
and brazenness. And that I know comes from the fact that like we got our independence, like we won, right? Like Cape Verde won its independence from the Portuguese, and so we knew our history. And so when I finally, as a youth worker, as an activist fighting for education and equity in education, then had this realization that sustainability was the answer. So not only, I found that within our circle was simply just black and brown folks, right? And
Mhm.
and spinning our wheels and realizing that, like, how do I connect this to this bigger issue, now knowing the words around climate change and climate crisis and environmentalism, right? Environmental justice, and knowing that sustainability, when I think of the definition, thinking of the three E's: environment, equity, right, and economy, and connecting those three dots and saying like, hey, let's really, how do we really get free, but in a way that also frees the land, frees the environment, frees the planet. Also, is a way, like, yeah, like wealth is beautiful, right? Like I feel like I'm rich, right? Maybe if you look at my bank account, you might disagree, but it's all relatives, right? But I am rich because I have these material things, but more importantly, I have love. More importantly, I have family. More importantly, I have relationships. More importantly, I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, and being able to move in this space. And so it came through that I connected with this organization called Green for All, which was founded by Van Jones, another Cabralista. Those that don't know, his second son is named Cabral. Um, uh,
Hmm.
and he, looked up to Amilcar Cabral. And once I read that and heard his message, was like, hey man, this is a brother that I can build with, even in his complexities, because Van is a better man than me, because he goes into places that I can't, and bipartisan, and reaches across the aisle and speaks to the Republicans in ways that I can't. I can to a degree, but not.
Mhm.
But we need everyone, right? And that's what Amilcar Cabral taught Van and I. And so Van, was looking to rebuild the dream, King's dream, and he came up with this organization called Green for All. And just like I said, was this idea of what we call leapfrog economics, right? So the need, very trailblazing, right? The need for us to be in an industry that is going to help change the way that we build our machines, the way that we power our machines, the way that we fuel our homes. So we're talking about renewable energy. We're talking about energy efficiency in our homes. And so I was all for it. I was like, man, and I finally found some allies of white folks that were about it, that got it right, and we all know how that feels, right? That ain't just placating or bringing you in as a token, but really know like, hey, you need to speak, and here you grab the mic and you lead this movement, as opposed to just having you follow them. And so that movement really opened up the door for a national audience, being able to go all the way to the other side, as far as Oakland and now Dream Corps and the Love Army is all part of the umbrella. And in the meantime, connecting with the national park, I was able to really help some of the young men and women of New Bedford in this collaboration with the Third Eye Unlimited nonprofit, which I was a board member and also just a part of the movement. And this collaboration had young people, where I was, the artistic director, where we would write songs about the local history of New Bedford, and also, sustainability themes, and then shoot videos for it, and put out an album and travel through all these national parks, whether it's what was happening in DC or all the national parks across the nation. And so that helped to just expand some of the message, the positive side of hip hop, the conscious side of hip hop, to continue to broaden and to help people see that poetry is at the core of hip hop.
Yes.
And the ability to be responsible in your words and be conscious in your words, especially from a youth voice, is so important, because the youth, as we know, are always at the forefront of every revolution, of every innovative thinking. And so for me in that role was just to create and to amplify their voices. And the name of that program is the Youth Ambassadors Program, or YAP. And you can check out, a number of videos that we did in connection with Ben Gilbard, who was a founder of Third Eye, and Frankie Barrows, who is now superintendent of a national park, of the East Coast National Park. So, all of that is fun and great, because the reach gets wider, and people get to really see that, hey, this is a positive movement. This is a conscious movement that has everyone in mind, including the bees and the trees, because, we want to pollinate truth. If you choose to see, pollinate the youth to truly be free, pollinate love. Let's all agree. I am the bee, and so that's
Yeah.
As we know, like, here's this insignificant to some people, like, oh, the bees, they give us honey. Like, no, they pollinate most of the things that we eat, right? And so they're what's called keystone species. And I think of the bees like us, right? Or like the panthers, right? It's like, hey, man, we're doing our thing. We're Black people, doing our thing, just trying to live. And then here you come. And then, like, we might have to sting you, you know what I mean? Because we will fight. We will fight for our freedom.
Right.
So,
Right.
the verse goes, keystone species, we need these bees, honey. They pollinate most of the things you eat. Funny, they do this for free without a fee. Billions in produce produced nationally. Now millions of bees have abandoned their hives. If they disappear in 4 years, human race will die. That's a quote from the famous scientist Einstein. It's logical to anyone with half a mind, man. It's horrible where you think you're gonna run and hide. It's possible for us to combine and stop these lives. Respect all lives wherever it resides, whether plant, algae, bacteria, or fungi. That's right. It's time for us to vocalize, because if the bees die, then we too die. That's right. It's time for us to strategize, because if the bees die, then we too die. I am the bee. Yeah,
love it. I love it. Thanks for joining us for part 1 of my conversation with Tem Blessed. Catch us next week with part 2 of the conversation, where we get more into his craft in terms of the new project, Planeta Blu, The Rise of Agoo. And also his work as a youth empowerment activist. You can catch us with new episodes each and every Tuesday at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the show notes, folks. They are going to be very, very, very rich. Tim Bless was dropping lyrics and dropping so much history and context. So I really encourage you to check out the show notes for this episode and every episode because we do them with you in mind. So until next time, I'm Florence Agoo again. Bye for now.